We're at the top of the hour and definitely the top of the day, and some very exciting things coming up from all of you tonight. We are recording this and will be available. I'm sure you're going to want to share it with your friends and your patients, those of you that are doctors. And we have some guests on with us tonight. Greg Neiswinder is going to talk about his personal experience he's had with the Vox technology. And we have the boss of the whole outfit on with us tonight. And it's just when you hear Jay talk, I just asked him, what, did you train with Tony Robbins or something? He's polysyllabic, where it just flows off of him, all the training and the research that he has done bringing this technology. Now, myself as a chiropractor, a nutritionist, and an acupuncturist, what he says cements in everything I've learned and studied through my 48 years of practice and many years of school prior to that time. So we're going to, without further ado, let me just make a couple of housekeeping issues. As you have questions, just go ahead and write them down. They'll go into Clark. Clark will read those to us towards the end of things. We're going to have a special that is offered towards the end of this presentation, which is going to last about 45 minutes. And you're going to get some freebies tonight. Plus, when you hear what's happening, you're going to realize there is a new technology that is so intricate that there isn't anybody on the planet that shouldn't be taking advantage of it. So let's get started and take no further time for introductions. We'll just get going. Okay, Greg, fire away.
Okay. Hey, Dr. Brimhall, thank you so much. I feel honored to be on this call tonight and honored to be able to introduce Vox Life. For me, you had asked me to share this story. About 15 years ago, I was involved in an accident that left me with a very slight neuropathy in my hands and feet. I had a pain level of about 2.5, somewhere in there. But also, the older I got, I started to have a real bad problem with balance and stability and very shallow breathing. And a couple of months ago, my wife came home. She was very excited. She'd been introduced to Vox socks and insoles, and she bought me a pair of the socks and the insoles, came home. And what I was most impressed with was within 30 seconds, she was able to demonstrate to me how it worked. There's a balance and stability test that you can do right away. And, if you knew my wife, she's only like 5'2", 100 pounds soaking wet. But it was an amazing test. It really got my attention. But then when I put on the socks, within 15 minutes, that pain level was completely gone. It's never come back in the 2 months that I've been wearing them. And also within, that same amount of time, I could feel the balance and stability, but most of all, my breathing was very deep again, not shallow breathing. A few weeks later, she and I had the pleasure of meeting Jay Dhaliwal, the CEO and founder of this company. And as we got to know him and he shared with us the story of the research, how they came to their conclusions, the whole process all the way to bringing it to market, it was just as impressive as the product itself. So with great pleasure, let me introduce the founder and CEO of Vox Life, Mr. Jay Dhaliwal.
Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be here tonight. Before I begin, I sincerely want to thank Dr. John Brimhall for giving us an opportunity and being such a gracious and humble man. I mean, I'm so enamored with him already. If you had the pleasure of meeting him, and I look forward to meeting Dr. John very soon. Sometimes you meet people where there's an immediate alignment of intent and integrity. And the things that they do every day to help people, and my alignment with Dr. John's purpose and his mission is 100%. It's one of the few people I've met in such a short period of time that we've clicked immediately. And my new friend and long-lost brother, Greg Neiswinder, Greg's one of those people that just tells you how it is. And Greg, thank you for introducing me to Dr. John. And Dr. John's entire team is super bunch of dedicated people whose purpose is to help people, and which really aligns with what we're trying to do at Vox Life. A lot of information to cover tonight, ladies and gentlemen, those of you that are listening tonight. It's a big topic. It's got a lot of history around it, and I want to get through the nuts and bolts of it, the core of understanding where neurostimulation started and where it is today. And so this might be a review for some of us that have studied neurostimulation or have practiced neurostimulation. But for many of us, it'll be some new stuff, and some certainly, and I hope some engaging material, and there's some video content that I'm so amazed with every time I see it that I'm going to share with you through this presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to get started. So we're a neurotech company at Vox Life. We happen to make hosiery products and foot accessories, but the core of it is neurostimulation, and I'll get to the why of it once we get through this presentation. So people ask me, Jay, what's neurostimulation? Well, you know what? It's the therapeutic activation or modulation of parts of the nervous system. What's great about neurostimulation is it's adjustable and reversible, and it sidesteps and avoids many of the systemic adverse side effects of medication treatment. Not to say that neurostimulation doesn't have its own side effects, its own impacts on our physiology. So, but overall, big picture, it's a therapeutic activation and modulation of the nervous system. So what does that mean? How do we modulate it? What's the historical modulation and neurostimulation look like? And I have to tell you guys, neurostimulation, although it sounds like a 21st or 22nd century word, has been around a very long time. If we start looking at the history books, back in 46 AD, a Roman physician and pharmacologist, Erconius Largus, was actually using electrical fish, eels, and torpedo rays to help treat gout and arthritis on pain management. And they would actually either, immerse people's feet into a tub with electrical fish in it, or actually pull the torpedo ray out and sting people where they were suffering from these afflictions. So that relationship between health, medicine, and electricity is not new. It's quite interesting at a very shocking beginning. And it goes back, almost 3,000 years. So it's been around for a very, very long time. But as we know neurostimulation today, it's got its roots back in about the 1750s, 1760s by work done by a brilliant Italian physiologist and doctor named Leopoldo Caldini, who was looking at electrical stimulation and the impact on human physiology. His work was so unique and so groundbreaking that he caught the attention of Benjamin Franklin, who started his own experimentation. Sadly, Benjamin didn't construct his experiments properly, and he actually hurt a lot of people in his process. There was injuries, pain, burning, a bunch of really terrible things happened. And Benjamin Franklin, if you read his history, you'll know that he was very proud of how smart he was. So he took his enthusiasm in neurostimulation and through the poorly designed experiments, came to believe himself that it was not appropriate for treating people. He actually reported his findings to the French Academy of Sciences in Paris. His presentation there, because he was such an acclaimed scholar, actually almost stopped neurostimulation dead in its tracks for decades. And really, this is a learning lesson that for all of us that are in the healthcare field, that just because somebody's tried something and it didn't work for them, it doesn't mean the process or the thought was wrong. It might have been the execution was an issue. And this is something that I've personally dealt with over the last 8 years as we developed our technologies and our products, that the execution of the idea is as important and as critical as the idea. So as we go forward, we're going to find that there's been some brilliant, brilliant people that have been investigating neurostimulation for the better part of 300-400 years. And so a gentleman named Louis Galvani wrote a book called Animal Electricity in 1780. And really this was the onset of real science and the scientific method starting to take place in discovering and understanding neurostimulation. And his book really was that first big step of saying, hey, listen, we are electrical animals. There is an electrical current that controls many of the physiological mechanisms in our body, especially our nervous system, and how does that work? And that led to Robert Bartholomew actually studying the electrostimulation of an awake human brain in 1874, which then led to Penfield and Jasper's publication of the first real comprehensive cortical map of the functional topography of the human brain. So these are leaps and bounds. Although there's 75 years between these massive steps, you have to understand that there was a void there. There was a complete abyss of understanding of what's happening neurologically to us and what impact electricity could actually have on the nervous system. And it's this commitment and stickiness to electricity that's really, in my mind, been a big detraction to understanding neurostimulation, and it's continued to today. So this went further and further, and then finally in 1985, Anthony Baker initiated TMS studies, and eventually leading to the ubiquitous TMS units that we all have used, might even use currently. Along the way, there was some deep probative study done into different pathologies in terms of how do we get to it. And one of the biggest breakthroughs of actually precise neurostimulation or precise neurostimulation was the development of the stereotactic frame. So for those of you that don't know what that is, we've all seen those halos sometimes at the hospital. The people are getting brain surgery or have a neck injury and they stabilize them with those halos around their head. That really came out in 1947, and it provided science the ability for deep brain stimulation by allowing very accurate electrode placement, because they could measure the angles, they could do very precise placement. Before that, guys, it was a matter of somebody guesstimating, hey, where in the skull or where in the head or where in the body are we going to place these electrodes? And you can imagine the missteps that took place. So the development of the stereotactic frame was critical in the precision required and developing those precise neurosurgery practices that we still see today. So leading to that, and these are big leaps and bounds we're making, but I want to get you up to today. And what all of that led to was really one of the groundbreaking theories in pain management, and what really cemented the marriage of electricity, neurostimulation, and pain management. And that's the gate control theory of pain proposed by Melzack and Wall in 1965. The fact that their understanding of the pain mechanism was analogous to an electrical circuit, it made only sense that electricity would become embedded in understanding and practicing neurostimulation. Now, this is key. If this theory hadn't been proposed and hadn't become accepted, generally accepted across the world as, and it's evolved over time in terms of how it works and why it works and how the inhibition of wide area stimulation overcomes narrow area stimulation, which is pain, over touch and vibration. The fact that it was matched to and mapped on the electrical circuit really cemented that for the next 40, 50 years, medicine and science and technology would seemingly meld electricity, neurostimulation, and pain relief together. This was the final rivet in that marriage that tied it together, and it hasn't really separated since then, okay? So when we talk about neurostimulation today, when you talk to neuroscientists, neurologists, neurosurgeons, you talk about neurostimulation, in their mind, for the most part, you're talking about some kind of electrical stimulation of either spinal column nerves, the vagus nerve, or directly into the central nervous system in some capacity through an electrically operated device that's either embedded just underneath the skull or underneath the skin, and we'll get into that. And the core of it is this theory. This is what's really cemented that. And because of this came up the prototype of now ubiquitous TMS, the TENS unit that we have in every major rehab office in North America, and that was in 1974. Now, the reason this is important is because there was some massive strides made 1980s and onwards, okay? So in 1988, Dr. Penry implanted the first vagus nerve stimulator in a patient. Now, there's a lot of reasons for neurostimulation, but the number one reason for neurostimulation and its application today, ladies and gentlemen, is chronic pain. It's affecting more than 1 billion people worldwide and is a major area of unmet medical need, right? So there's different types of neurostimulation that's trying to address chronic pain. There's deep brain stimulation, there's peripheral nerve stimulation, transcranial direct current stimulation, TMS, spinal cord stimulation, and all of these are in some way or form directed at chronic pain, and they're all electrical based. Okay, now this tells us something that we've focused on one thing and gone down that road, but there's some learnings to be had, not just in neurostimulation development, but other technologies and other sciences that have also gone down the road. And I'll take a sidestep a little bit. So when I was in university, and I had a lot of smart friends, that helped me get through university, as they say, and those of us that are astronomy nuts and we all know about the string theory proposed by Dr. Hawkins many number of years ago. And I remember some of my classmates who would challenge some of the findings and some of the theories that were presented in the textbooks and taught at the highest levels in all the major universities across the world, because for them there was enough gaps that the theory didn't make sense, and they would always raise their hand in lecture class and challenge, whether it was astrophysics class or the physics class, and they'd say, listen, this doesn't add up. What about this possibility? What about that possibility? And many times they were silenced and really put in a place of detriment, because they challenged what was the pervasive understanding of what science was proposed, let alone proposed by this eminent scholar. Now, 40 years later or 30 years later, 3 years ago, Dr. Huck comes out and he says, hey, you know what, my theory was actually incomplete and basically wrong. Now I think back and I look, man, there's a lot of smart people that were questioning it when I was in school, and they weren't really listened to. And this is something that I keep in mind all the time when we stick with an ideology or we stick with a dogma that's outside of what's generally accepted. It doesn't mean we shouldn't listen. We should listen and always try to evaluate it. Does this make sense? Because if I had listened to general accepted neuroscience and generally accepted neurostimulation, the technology we've developed would not exist today. It was in the face of that incredulous disbelief that things didn't add up for me, that didn't add up for us here at Vox. I said, listen, what they're proposing didn't make sense. So that's just a prelude to what we're going to talk about in terms of how we got to here. But we find that this is happening more and more in science. It's happening more and more in medicine. And this is why sometimes certain tangents of development stop dead in their tracks and don't progress further than they should have. So that's a long-winded way of saying is that, hey, innovation is not going to come from the old textbooks. Innovation is going to come from books that haven't been written yet. So let's get back to this presentation. So the vagus nerve stimulation is really the tipping point of current modern neurostimulation. Okay, it's become an integral part of epilepsy therapy for treatment-resistant patients who are not candidates for surgery. It's also been approved as treatment for resistant depression. This is the last hill for neurostimulation, okay, vagus nerve stimulation. Now, you'd think that since it's the last word and all this research has been done on it, we'd know why it works and how it works. So we know the big picture of it. It's the different types of myelinated fibers, the A and B fibers, and the unmyelinated C fibers, and the chronic VNS stimulation seems to engage the afferent A fibers. That's all fine and dandy, right? And the afferent signals target the brainstem and ultimately the limbic, reticular, and autonomic centers of both hemispheres. That's a given, considering that every piece of neuroinformation must go into the brainstem. And if it's going into the brainstem, ultimately it must affect the limbic, reticular, and autonomic centers. That's a given on Neurology 101. Neuroimaging says that there's changes, in the cerebellum, limbic system. It's great. But when we try to ask them, say, what's causing that antidepressant mechanism? What's causing that anticonvulsant mechanism of VNS? The answer is it's unknown. Okay? It's unknown. And that, for me, is the big thing. Neuroscience and neurostimulation is so massive that we are just scratching the surface of our understanding of where we're at and what we're trying to do. And there's a paper that I would recommend everybody to read, okay? It's called Consciousness and the Brainstem by Joseph Parvizi and Antonio Damasio. It was published 27th of September in the year 2000. And what they're talking about is absolutely what we're talking about here. They're talking about the close relationship between the mechanism of underlying cortical activation and the bioregulatory mechanisms outlined in all the classical ideas of reticular formation that modulate the electrophysiological activity of the cerebellar cortex. So what they're saying is this. They're saying that if we can help the brainstem get to homeostasis and operate at its factory settings, their proposal is that we're actually going to elevate our consciousness. And they have a complete discussion of what that means to overall physical health, mental health, and spiritual health. It's one of the most groundbreaking papers I've ever read. It's completely ignored by medical curriculums across North America, but it's brilliant. And I encourage you to read it. I'm going to forward the link to where it can be found online to Dr. Brimhall after the conversation, and I hope that he disseminates to everybody that's listening. I encourage everybody to read it. It was done at the University of Iowa College of Medicine, and it's one of my favorite papers when discussing how our brainstem plays such a critical role in so many different facets of our physiology. And when they say about VNS stimulation not knowing what the exact mechanism of action is, it's because it's too widespread. These neuronal networks that exist inside our brainstem and in our brain work in an algorithmic fashion. The systems have a correlative relationship, and these are the relationships that we've studied for 8 years to develop our technology in terms of it's not one precise network or one precise nuclei, it's a network of nuclei that in conjunction deliver amazing results. And that's the big missing gap between, this is why they're coming back and saying they don't know what the exact mechanism of action is because they're not looking at the holistic total picture. There's more happening in many parts of the neuronal networks that they can't address. So what does that mean for overall health? That means we're going to rely on neurostimulation devices and use this, okay? That means until we take a larger, wider approach, we're going to be using devices that are planted into the skull or skin and are going to be usually battery powered, okay? Now this needs to be very, very carefully done. Now they don't call this neurosurgery, but it has to be done by a neurosurgeon or a neurologist. And there are many variables that need to be managed as a part of this. One of them is current, this frequency, pulse width, voltage, on-off schedules must be adjusted. Even more so, not every person is right for this technology for neurostimulation implants. So proper patient selection is crucial to successful treatment. So if you got 3 people in the room, it might only be viable for one person. And then you get this wonderful process of actually getting surgery done and get it implanted. I mean, there's a poor fellow on the screen here who's got these things planted into his forehead and his scalp, and I'm wondering, and that's probably to treat Parkinson tremors in this situation. But this is what we're left with. This is the leading edge of neurostimulation today, ladies and gentlemen. This is what the gate theory of pain management has led to this. It was mapped to an electrical system. We've got electrical solutions. And what we've completely ignored, and I don't know why, but there's something along the way, we've completely ignored that our body responds to non-electrical stimulation every second that we are conscious and awake, and even when we're asleep. And that's the part that's been really ignored, and that's the part that we've been focused on for the last 8 years and saying, what else can be done to get neurostimulation happening, and what can we do in the brainstem to get the results we know that are going to come from homeostasis, right? And so getting back to this just a little bit, what are the side effects of electrical neurostimulation? There's behavior and psychological adverse effects. There's things like anxiety that kick in, depression, fear, hypomania, just incredibly terrible, terrible things that can result from having one of these devices planted in you. And then there's the physiological issues of respiratory rate irregularities, flushing, nausea, oculomotor symptoms, trachycardia, and sweating. I mean, these are just small things, and if it's done wrong or a lead gets rusted or corroded, it can lead to hemorrhaging and other issues. And I'm not being a fearmonger here. I'm just saying that this is what's available to us today as the last word in neurostimulation to treat, either chronic pain or treatment-resistant depression or epilepsy, right? And when we talk about these conditions, we talk about other neurological conditions like Parkinson's or tremors or MS or fibromyalgia. the solution from industry, the solution from the general purveyors of the technology are going to come back with another electrical neurostimulation device to answer those questions. To them, everything looks like a nail because all they have is a hammer. And this happens in medicine every day. It happens in every industry every day, that if it's working, great. Innovation doesn't really make sense unless it's super profitable out of the gate. And because neurology is so difficult to grasp, until we take a step back and say, it's not one cell, it's not one network, there's a neural network that all work in conjunction together, and that there is a correlative relationship between the different receptors and the different parts of the brain, we're not going to get to the solutions that we believe here at Vox we've been working on and discovering and fine-tuning for the last 8 years. So what's the future, right? What's the future of neurostimulation? The future of neurostimulation is drug-free, non-electrical, non-invasive, safe, immediate neurostimulation. Now, this sounds like a dream. This has actually been my dream since I was 13 years old. And you think, wow, Jay, you started early. I started early for a lot of reasons. I started early because when I was 13 years old, my mother was diagnosed with MS. And so this is going back to 1983. And in 1983, there wasn't a lot known about MS or really most neurological conditions or degenerative conditions. Today, my mom's condition would be classified as progressive relapsing MS. All I knew as a young person was that she was diagnosed, and it was such an acute case, she went from diagnosis to a wheelchair in under a year and a half. That was my exposure to neurological conditions and neurological degeneration. What that implanted in my head was that and being a curious kid, you always want to learn, you always want to know more in terms of what's happening and why it's happening. Not a lot of answers were known. MS in 1983 was the black box of neurological conditions. If medical professionals didn't understand what neurologically was wrong, it went to this bucket, this black box called MS. Today, that black box has a different name. Today, it's called fibromyalgia. If there's a neurological condition that can't be understood, some neurological pain that's not really defined, you have fibromyalgia. We see case after case after case after case here at Vox Life. People say, well, I have fibromyalgia. My question was, who said so? What are the defining conditions? Well, it's undiagnosable, so it must be fibromyalgia. That is the logic we are disseminating as healthcare professionals, so it's a little misleading. So what does this mean? This means that we have an opportunity to give people a chance at a higher quality of life if we can do things without surgery, without drugs, without electrical neurostimulation. So I'm going to play a video on screen. I hope you can all see it. Now, this is an MS patient response to non-electrical stimulation. And I'm not kidding you. This video is so personal to me because this was my mom 35 years ago at the onset and the progression of her MS. And I want you to see this. And I think you'll find it as compelling as I do.
All right, so it's a recording.
Her name is Daisy.
And she has MS. And she's showing us her trimmer. This is without the socks, right, Daisy? No socks on and no insole. So now she's going to step on the insole.
So what you're going to see is, if you count backwards, that's less than 7 seconds. Her tremor starts. She steps on the insoles. Within 7 seconds, they've subsided so drastically. Now watch, we're going to ask her to step off the insoles. She's going to step back, and almost immediately, as she starts using her hands, the tremors come back. Now, these involuntary tremors, there's a recent study out of Japan that connected involuntary movement and tremors in Parkinson's to incomplete communication with the basal ganglia in the top of the brainstem. And right away, Daisy again is touching, it's got her motor coordination back and the involuntary shakes go away. Now what this meant for Daisy was that she could actually wash her face, brush her teeth, and feed herself without help. Seems like little things, but it's a massive, massive improvement in her quality of life. Because when I see this, I'm a 13-year-old kid again. I'm watching my mom, who had the exact same conditions as it progressed precipitously. And there you go. Now, could you imagine this? I've not seen... So I'm going to stop this right here. I'm going to stop it there. I've been exposed to incredible neurological drugs because of my mom's condition, treatments, modalities. You name it, there isn't a specialist in the world that I haven't taken my mother to. What we see there with Daisy, there isn't an electrical stimulation device in the world. There isn't a drug or an antibiotic in the world. There isn't any surgery in the world. There isn't any modality or any physical therapy in the world that gives those results you just saw as fast as they deliver it, without electricity, without drugs, without side effects, without complications. This is why we do what we do. It's to help people like Daisy and other people that have these chronic conditions that there are no mainstream solutions that have bigger side effects than actual benefits. So that's what this is about. So what's causing this response for Daisy and other people? It's something that we call HPT. HPT stands for Human Performance Technology. It's based on 45 years of research in neuromuscular science. And what it is, ladies and gentlemen, is a proprietary pattern of neuroreceptor activation points. And the results are instant and drug-free. Now let me stop right here, because there's something you have to understand about how we got to here. In 2008, I was introduced to a chiropractic neurologist and a neuromuscular dentist, and they had designed an oral orthotic, a splint device like a retainer, to help people with TMJ and TMD issues. And it was a very good product. A side effect of their product, a side benefit that they were seeing, was that the patients were seeing improvements in balance, in gait control, in motor output, in coordination, in strength. And when I saw this device and I saw the testing and the data that they had, I was completely blown away and completely amazed. And simply because I thought, hey, maybe I can help my mother. Maybe there's something here for people with MS, because that was where my focus had been for so long. I'm just trying to understand what could be done to help those. In the meantime, between being 13 and 2008, I'd gone to school, become a software engineer, and worked in encryption software for about 20 years with some amazing companies. And really what I studied was pattern recognition and pattern encryption. That was what I've learned my entire life and applied to business and to a career. And when I asked these brilliant guys, I said, tell me how you're getting a neuromuscular response with this oral orthotic. And the feedback that I got was, well, you know, we're aligning the jaw in a certain way, and that alignment is leading to better muscle control and tonic activity. Now, that didn't really ring 100% true with me. It didn't ring true with me because I had studied so much neurology trying to help my mom that I knew that there was more missing there. And so, you know, I began my own journey of discovery to understand what possibly could be happening. And so, now this part of the story is pretty funny, and I shared it with Dr. John when we first spoke. So I'm trying to understand what's happening between the nerves in the face, the jaw, the TMJ joint, and what's happening neurologically. And I happened to come across this study done in 1964 by Dr. C.J. Griffin, who mapped out disorders of the trigeminal nerves and the mandibular joint and the impact on brainstem and the reticular formation and the nuclei therein. And what Dr. C.J. Griffin, now this is 1964, guys. In 1964, he figured this out. He concluded that if there's a disorder in the trigeminal nerves, if they're under stress or they're impinged, or if there's a disorder in the mandibular region, that it's going to impact the connectivity and the information into the brainstem, and that it's going to limit the efficacy or the optimization of the functionality of the different nuclei in the reticular formation. Now, this is a big deal. What this means is that if the cranial nerves or the nervous system in the face isn't working right, you're going to limit the function of the brainstem. Now, why is the brainstem so important? The brainstem is the first part of our neurology that develops when we're an embryo. Our entire nervous system develops from it. It controls our autonomic system, controls our sympathetic, our parasympathetic system, our organs, The periodontal gray is our body's natural pain-fighting mechanism, controls our respiratory efficiency. It controls all of these amazing things. And if that part of the brain is not working right, believe me, we're going to have issues with our physiology. And every system, and you guys will know this, you guys are medical professionals, every cell in our body, every system in our body is striving, fighting toward homeostasis. It wants to be in balance. So if we knew a way, if we could find a way to help the brainstem get into homeostasis, we could then realize all the benefits of a system in homeostasis. So what would that mean? Better natural pain-fighting mechanisms. That would mean better respiratory response. That would mean better heart rate control. That would mean better mobility, better balance, better vestibular system, better sleep, better recovery. All of these things would come out of it. So when we were looking at this, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how could that be possible. So one of the things that we looked at was trigeminal neuralgia. Again, focusing on the trigeminal area. And so those of that you know what trigeminal neuralgia is, it's called a suicide disease because it's like having a brain freeze 24 hours a day. And the recommended ways of treating trigeminal neuralgia are drugs, fill the face full of chemicals, electricity, zap the nerves, in drastic cases, surgery, cut the nerves. But there was anecdotal evidence that pointed to manipulation of the bottom of the feet that led to instant or almost immediate soothing of those nerves and a decrease in pain. Now, this sets off a light bulb for a person like me because I know what happens when those nerves are at rest. The brainstem's working better. If the brainstem works better, we're going to see all of this amazing wellness come out of it. So we started looking at the bottom of the feet. And ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of input points at the bottom of the feet. There are things called mechanoreceptors. There are things called dermatomes, acupuncture, acupressure. And all of these play a critical role in sending information to our brainstem. Our brainstem is that interchange of information. Okay? It's where all of that information is processed. So what HPT is a trigger. If you watch on the screen right now, HPT is a trigger that sends a very precise neural response in the receptors up through the somatosensory pathways, through the peripheral nervous system into the brainstem. And the brainstem processes this very precise signal and helps and gets it to homeostasis. Now that's critical. Once the brainstem's in homeostasis, we're going to have an immediate and direct response on the vestibular system, balance, spatial orientation, proprioception, respiratory control, motor control, posture, pain regulation, HRV, skeletal muscle control, our flight or fight. It puts our system in the balance. So what that means is our body now is almost getting a factory reset. It's like the Control-Alt-Delete on our computer. It's going to put us into a situation where we can actually do more with our natural neurology of where it's supposed to be, as opposed to being compromised by either our diets, by stress, sugar, drugs, caffeine, all the things that impact our neurology now don't. And now our system can actually regulate itself better and get us into a point of wellness that's better. So some of this amazing research that we looked at, so there was a study done at the University of British Columbia in Canada. They mapped out the mechanoreceptors on the bottom of the feet, and their conclusion was, hey, these receptors play some role in postural stability and balance. More research needs to be done. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, no research was done after that point, right? There's numerous studies done at Harvard that looked at neuroimaging, fMRI imaging of acupuncture and the correlated brain activity and the neuronal network brain activity on acupuncture points. Conclusion, very specific acupuncture meridians have a very specific neuronal network activity in the brain. But what you find is none of these studies actually reference each other. None of them actually talk to each other. None of them believe that the other person has anything of worthwhile to contribute. There's a study that looked at mapping the dermatomes all over our body, the spinal nerves all over our body in terms of what that information track is backwards. Again, not referencing mechanoreceptor studies or glabrous receptor studies, not referencing acupuncture, not referencing chiropractic neurology, not referencing any of the other research that's looking at the same thing. Now, as a software person, I see these different variables and people telling me, well, there's no correlative relationship, Jay. And I look at the physiology of it, and these receptors are intertwined, they're side by side, they're overlapping, they're touching each other, and it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that there was no correlative relationship between them. It's illogical. So the first conclusion that we made was that there is a correlation here. There's a correlation between the very specific type of response and signal that each receptor is going to send, and it can get to the brainstem. Now we had two lighthouses that we were aiming toward. One was the oral orthotic that we knew was delivering these benefits. The second was this anecdotal evidence of manipulation of the bottom of the feet that was getting us the same type of results. So we knew it was possible. What was key was finding what that combination was. And finding that combination took better part of 6 years, many, many hours, many long sleepless nights, but we managed to deduce a very specific pattern and sequence of neurostimulation, neuroreceptor stimulation. And this receptor stimulation, ladies and gentlemen, is through superficial tactile stimulation. It's simple touch. We've either woven this pattern into the socks or molded it into our insoles that through simple touch is triggering a very precise response in our nervous system to help the brainstem and the different systems get to homeostasis, which is leading to unbelievable results. And the results are truly, truly groundbreaking. We've commissioned a number of independent studies to look at it. We conducted a 1,000-person study that looked at painful neuropathy in diabetics. We have over 90% positive response of people saying that diabetic neuropathy pain was reduced. Intake compartment was at least level 4. 76% their pain reduced to level 2 or less. We see a 31% improvement in postural stability and balance, which relates to an 8x reduction in fall risk for our seniors. We see a 15 degrees improvement in range of motion. We see a 22% improvement in power out gait on wind gait cycles. We see an improvement in velocity of force and eccentric force. Now, what does this mean? This means that we offer a natural pain remedy, a pain relief without drugs, without pills, without surgery. We're reducing fall risk and better mobility for people. And we're doing this through simple products like socks. Because as medical professionals, you all know that patient compliance is a big roadblock to their wellness and their road to recovery. They're in your office, they're in your clinic, and you're telling them 3 things to do. They say, yes, 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 doc, yes, doc, yes, doc. They nod their head and they go home and they don't do any of them. Here's an opportunity where they can actually take that technology with them and enjoy and benefit from the technology and what it does for them 24/7. And now what's going to happen is they're going to correlate that improvement in their health to the advice given by their healthcare practitioner. Now what they're going to be open to more and more compliant is all the other things you've told them to do. Watch their diet, be more mobile, be more active, right? We all know that eating healthy and exercise are the keys to wellness, but not everybody does them. If we can give them things that they can do without changing their lifestyle, we're going to see a marked improvement in their overall health and quality of life. And that's our mission. We want to help 1 billion people with their quality of life and wellness. And that's what Vox HPT does for people through the simple product. So what are the benefits? Better physical mobility, quality of life, pain relief, increased energy, exercise performance for those that are committed to their health and wellness, endurance, recovery. And that's just not exercise endurance. That's a long day at work, standing on your feet endurance. That's like having a better work-life balance, working a full day and going home and having time for the family and the children and the spouse and not being completely exhausted. And for those that are committed to peak performance, because they can lift more often and recover better, they're going to be able to build muscle. And that's all possible because we've been able to harness our body's natural neurology really to deliver a drug-free, non-invasive, non-electrical solution. It's easy to use. They don't need to call you to use it. You're going to recommend it. They're going to use it. They're going to benefit from it. 24-hour access, non-reactionary, age-safe, pregnancy-safe, affordable, and has 0 side effects. This really is really the forefront of neurology today. I had the pleasure of chatting and working with Dr. Ted Carrick, and we're looking at different ways to do different studies on this. And he said to me, he goes, Jay, my boy, he goes, you're about 50 years ahead of anything else in neurostimulation in the world. He goes, you might even be 100. He goes, because no one is focused on non-electrical results. But that's what we're able to do today. And that's our story, and that's how we got to today. So I'm so appreciative of everybody taking the time to listen today. And thank you, Dr. John, for allowing us to share our story. And that's what I got to say for today. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. John.
All right. Well, Clark, are there any questions? If he's got any recorded there, sometimes we're mic'd up or muted. It takes a second to come on. Clark, do we have any questions that you would like to read to us?
No questions so far. They wanted, obviously, the book that you referenced early on, that information, which I think you said you were going to provide that so we could send that out, right?
Yeah.
Right, if you'll send that to me, we'll make sure that they get it, and when we will send this recording out, and we'll see that that gets to everybody. Now, Jay, tell them a little bit, if they want to get these socks, how do they get them? And tell them about the special we're offering through myself, Dr. Brimhall, and you and Vox.
Well, it's really, I mean, Dr. Brimhall, I'm so appreciative of having an opportunity to share it, and so what we want to do, not even willing, what we're excited to do is if anybody wants to email us at opportunity@voxlife.com, just mention that they heard the lecture tonight, mention your name, and we're more than happy to send them a pair of socks and some literature for them to review. And the people here in our practitioner team here will be more than happy to work with them to talk them through how they can be involved with Vox Life. We know that once people use it and they see that just the tremendous feedback that the products can do, and Dr. John, you know, thank you for willing to do that. I mean, you know, it's all about sharing and helping people grow as professionals and helping them help more people. So we're more than happy to do that. So the first, you know, I think we talked about the first 100 people, a couple hundred people that write into us, we're more than happy. And everybody should understand that, you know, this is all the kindness and the generosity from Dr. Brimhall for making this happen. So Dr. John, thank you for doing that for all these wonderful people that are listening tonight.
Real easy for them there, Jay. The guys, write this number down, 480-964-5198. Let me do it again. We're going to be talking to Jason, 480-964-5198. And that's Jason, who runs my office, and he will show you how to get these socks. He will show you how to sign up if you want to tell other people about it, and then he will also help you. Now, another thing that will happen if you sign up where you get these socks, there's actually a special. You saw the lady stand on an insole. The company is going to furnish those for free with you if you sign up and actually become a distributor. That's only $40, and the socks alone are worth that. Jay's also offered, if you want to call directly to the company, they'll help you get the socks free of charge to try them out. I highly recommend you go ahead, call Jason, sign up, and start using them yourself. Now, as an applied kinesiologist, I'm an acupuncturist, nutritionist, applied kinesiologist, and a chiropractor. So it's very easy for those of you that want to test these out. Those of you who come to my seminars, you see we always check range of motion, like you can raise the arm up and it should go up and bop you in the head. Most of us are lucky to get past center. And by putting the socks on, you'll see an increased range of motion in the arms immediately. You can have them lying on a couch, or they're lying supine, faces up, and you check the range of motion with their legs out to each side, and then you put the socks on. You'll see an increase of range of motion up to 90 degrees. It's beyond understanding unless you realize that we are talking to the brain through the feet. We've all studied, we've looked at the feet, we see there's all kinds of points in that you can contact both in acupuncture and reflexology, but never have we been able to take our therapist with us. When you put the socks on, the therapist is at work as long as those socks are on, and you'll see a reduction of pain, increased range of motion, and increased strength. You'll see muscles get stronger, quadriceps, tensor fasciae lata, psoas. You'll see spasms come out of the spastic area, strength come into the weak areas. It's literally like say, having your therapist, your chiropractor, your acupuncturist go with you 24 hours a day. You say, well, I don't want to do that. My patients need to come in and see me. Well, for a guy who was booked 3 to 4 months in advance for years at a time, I will tell you, the faster you get results and the more dramatic the results are, the more referrals you get. And if you're looking at money, the more money you will make. I created $1 million practice. Most of you know I taught a seminar how to create $1 million practice. It was by helping people nobody else could help. So you don't have to have all the years of acupuncture and nutrition and kinesiology I have. You can use the socks. And then we'll teach you how to use the others to go to a new area. And we will be demonstrating this in our live seminars. We'll be demonstrating this at homecoming. We've decided, Jay's asked me to speak the last week of of January with his group, and there's going to be 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people there. I'm sure you'll want to join, and we'll send that information out to you. But we're going to roll homecoming over into February this year, so I can take advantage of teaching their people, and we will demonstrate to you the instantaneous results. Now, seeing the lady that had MS, I have treated hundreds of MS patients, and we've had incredible results with it. The way we get results with MS is doing all 6 things right: structural correction, nutritional correction, electromagnetic balance, the whole 6 steps that we talked about. But what we saw here, all she did was put the socks on or step onto the foot, the orthotic that stimulates the feet in the right place, and we got instantaneous results. Imagine if we couple that with the 6 steps of wellness, with the structured nutritional detoxification that we do. You're going to see faster, better results. Those of you who've been around for a while know the last 2 years we have taught treatment for peripheral neuropathy at homecoming. We've done webinars on peripheral neuropathy. Jonathan Walker actually told me about the Vox technology, and it didn't quite sink in how wearing socks had anything to do with peripheral neurology. Now that I come back and see the science, it is very, very exciting, and I've been testing this out now for a couple of months, and I have yet to see a patient that does not respond. Greg talked on earlier, what he didn't mention to you when he first got really, really, really sick was from a parasite, so we'll have him tell you that story later on. But he was at a pain threshold of 9 to 10 with that parasite until he got a hold of the Beamer. And the Beamer took him from a 9-10 down to a 2.5 or maybe a 3, and the socks took him all the way to pain-free now for months at a time. There's, being in this game like I have for 48 years, what I want is results, and I'm a really poor loser. Let's say that again. I'm good sport, I'm just a poor loser. I never like not helping a patient. That's a double negative. But the point is I want to help everybody that comes into me. And with the Beamer, Greg got good results. With the Vox, he got 100% results. Why not implement this along with those of us who are using Beamer and the nutrition, the adjuster, the percussor, the laser? It's just one more piece of the puzzle, and that's what I write, the puzzle piece. So this article will be in the puzzle piece next week. Just your ability to tap into this, listen to this over again, and see Jay's immediate and wonderful explanation of how this technology works. Like I said, they have upcoming seminars, as do we. We want you to grasp the vision here, try them yourself, apply them to your patients, your friends, your family. If you have somebody that has MS, you'll be driven like Jay is to help them, or ALS, or chronic fatigue syndrome, or fibromyalgia. Those are all names of malfunction. We don't want dysfunction, we want optimal function, and definitely the Vox technology helps us to take it to a new level. So let me give you the number again and make it real simple. Call Jason tomorrow morning. He starts on Eastern time, so he's up pretty early. 480-964-5198, and tell me you'd like to get involved. That's the easiest way to do it. You can just give him a call there. Or you can just email jason@brimhall.com. How's that for hard for you? I think brimhallwellness.com is what his is. jason@brimhallwellness.com. I'm easy, Dr. John at brimhall.com. So we want to make it easy to get a hold of us. We want to make it dramatic for you to see the improvement. Jay, did you have anything else for us, or Greg?
Dr. John, I can't wait to talk about new studies when we do it and do some more studies and come back and share those with the team as well. And I'm super excited to have you speak at the end of January at CalJam. I think we're gonna educate a whole bunch of people about what's happening in healthcare, and I think they're going to be so honored to have you there and share just your wonderful talents and abilities with the fraternity there. I think it's going to be a great event.
Well, I think the following month we'll have you there so we can get this technology to a whole new level and give them the science behind it too. So we'll talk about that. So we'll get January and February going for everybody to take advantage of this great technology.
Perfect. That sounds like a great idea.
Well, gang, we're about out of time unless somebody else has some questions. I don't know if you've had a hard time asking them or Jay did such a good job, you're just flabbergasted. But believe me, I've been using these now for a couple of months, just like we talked about other people using them. Give it a try. 480-964-5198. Let's get you started. Jay, Greg, thanks a lot. We look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night, all. Bye-bye.